Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast, brought to you from the Aquarium Rush Studios in beautiful downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. My name's Ben.
I'm Amy.
And I'm Charles.
Today we're going to start out talking about, we're going to segue, right? Mm-hmm. And talk about some of those big influences in the hobby. Mm-hmm. And I get to get on my little soapbox, because I do that,
sure.
Right? And what got us into the hobby? I am not a reader. I don't sit around and read much.
Right.
Which, you look at the big stacks of books on the table and the bookshelves behind me and, you'd think otherwise. But I was definitely if it had a lot of pictures in the book, I was game. And that's kind of what got me into fish. And I brought with today the book that did it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has the little Dewey Decimal thing on the back of it because I did accidentally steal it from my library.
Accidentally.
That's what all criminals say.
Yep. So, if my school librarian is watching or listening out there.
She's like, I knew it.
Sorry. I didn't mean to.
Fugitive.
Yeah. But so this book, the reason I bring that up is this book, right? Look at all the writing. It's lots of pictures. And really, it's pictures with the name of the fish. And that is all that it is. And then you get to the back and there's a few pages where there's actual descriptions. But pretty much, it's pictures of cool looking fish. Mm-hmm. And so I would, when all the other kids were getting Paddington Bear and Ralph S. Mouse, I would go towards the Guide to Aquarium Fishes by Klaus Payson. And in this book there's a picture of a clown killifish. I don't even remember. So a clown killifish, you all know that's my favorite fish. Mm-hmm. And I think that fish was Epiplatus annulatus, or actually is that right now. And I say is that right now because that name has changed. It was Pseudo Epiplatus for a while. And it was even, I believe, Panchax was the other name. Yeah, there it is. So when I got this book, it was Epiplatus annulatus at the time, but it's common name the rocket Panchax. Mm-hmm. It's because that tail looks like the flame coming out of the back of a rocket and those stripes. So that fish was great. See, there's the picture. There's my fish right there.
Wait, I need to see the picture. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to find that fish. And yes, it's right next to an Orthobronchius. That fish in the 70s and early 80s was not, pet stores didn't have that fish.
Right.
I mean, occasionally you'd
still
hear of.
Barely have it now.
Well, we
Only
do.
if you're cool.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have, because we're cool.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not biased at all.
I spent a lot of time, and you can see, so want to see something funny? You know what that is? There's a little smudge on here. Mm-hmm. That's bird poop. It was open to that page a lot. Anyway, so
and if you're a bird owner, it's only a matter of time.
Exactly, and I did. I had actually for a while I had more birds than I had fish. Anyway, that's a weird way of introducing what the podcast is about tonight. We're going to talk about aquarium books, and no greater source of information in the information age than actual, real, true aquarium books.
Yeah, that holds true, honestly. I mean, information's going to change to a degree, but not that much.
Well, I have one counterpoint, and you guys just naturally set me up to it.
All right, perfect.
A good aquarium fish magazine.
Yes.
Because, Coral and Amazonas are very clearly the modern, flagship magazine
for
series.
sure.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Any of the new information coming out, so this is one of the newer coral issues on spawning corals in aquaria. It's not going to happen in a book. You're going to find it first there.
Right.
This is a couple of years old, but this issue, Amazonas, gets passed around a lot in this store.
Yes.
Wild bettas.
Yeah, I've got a couple that I always go back to, too.
And this is a very special issue to me. This is the one that introduced me to wild bettas.
Excellent. What magazine is that?
This is Aquarium Fish International. It's one of the 2009 issues. This is now a extinct issue magazine. This
As
doesn't exist
many of them
anymore.
have gone.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great point, though.
But this one, that's mine.
Yeah. So the researched written word is
There you go.
what it's all about.
Most of it is going to be eventually compiled into a good book, but the first piece of information that people like us are going to get it is going to be in something like that.
I don't mean to completely downplay the value of research done on the internet, and that is just such a great amount of accessible information. Unfortunately, it's also a great amount of accessible misinformation.
Yeah, it's so diluted. By the time you find good information, you've sifted through, 200 pieces of either passed along information or just straight up misinformation. And
Right.
if you're not used to doing that, it's intimidating. And you just have to, how do you sift out the bad and find the good? And it's research and well backed up stuff. That's what we're talking about. This written word that has time and effort and has a name attached to it that knows what they're talking about.
That name that you know and trust, instead of, some 14-year-old sitting up in his bedroom that's had a fish tank for 6 months and now is an expert on reef keeping.
Funny how that works.
And I think it's important to note, we've got a lot of books here, and the smallest book is written by the same guy as the biggest book. And I don't need to spend a lot of time on this one, but it's one that is meaningful to me because aquarium books are a lot of the time like a history of the hobby.
Oh, yeah.
Trends come and go. Things are kept in different ways. And this is a little home aquarium guide by Axelrod from, I think, the 70s. I would trust this information before most of what we see online. And this is talking about growing plants with sunlight because they didn't have easily accessible home lighting that you could just chuck on a tank. But at the time, this was the best technology available and the best way to do it. Concepts still stay.
I love the history that books like that have. Around here is a copy of Exotic Aquarium Fishes by by Innes. That book, I think it originally came out in the 30s or 40s, and they did 15 or 16 editions. There's still an edition of that book from the 80s.
Wow.
That's all been thoroughly updated. On my list sometime is to get a first edition.
That would be cool.
Yeah, Innes Exotic Fish.
Yeah. It's always a good sign when you can tie a name to a very well-known scientific name of a fish.
Right.
Parachirodon innesi or Axelrodi.
Those are the two. Yeah, those were definitely the two. Right.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of we divided loosely into a freshwater segment and a saltwater segment. Because I was trying to figure out, when I was working on this, okay, here's my list of books. And I just started writing down lists. There's my top 5 list. Right? Mm-hmm. And then in my top 5 list, I forgot Ecology of the Planet Aquarium, and I forgot this book.
Yeah.
And,
This is why I didn't even attempt for us to have this as a top 5. It was just all right, guys, we need to just do it.
we're just going to talk about books for an hour, and hopefully nobody gets bored.
Hopefully not too much more than an hour.
I just brought in basically every book that I felt the need to spend my own money on.
So what was your first, necessarily your first aquarium book, but your first favorite aquarium book? You know what I mean? Differently,
Yep.
They're two different things.
Yep. Easily this one. This is the first aquarium book that I bought for myself. And not it was one of my mom's books that I inherited.
That one's your copy, or is that my copy?
This is your copy.
Oh, okay.
But
And
this
what
is,
book is it?
Sharks and Rays, Aquarium Sharks and Rays by Scott Michael. And I had picked this one up because getting back to magazines were my first exposure to this, the hobby in general, because my mom and all her friends had, they each had different subscriptions and they would share.
Nice.
And so back when aquarium fish had not the magazine Aquarium Fish had not consolidated into Aquarium Fish International, there was
Oh,
a
yeah.
marine fish series written by Scott Michael.
Right.
And they were some of my favorite articles. So then to see on the bookshelf a book about keeping sharks in aquariums by that guy, I had to have it.
I love the way he presents the information in that book.
Yeah.
He talks about nurse sharks as being great aquarium sharks. If you can do a 14,000 gallon aquarium,
Exactly.
I think it's perfect. It's realistic.
Yeah, it's the tempered advice of an expert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And gives you that realistic look at what's going on in there. He's not saying, no, you can't do it. He's saying, all right, if you really want to do it and you actually care about this fish, then you should do it right. Mm-hmm. Here's doing it right.
And I'm going to toot this guy's horn a little bit. This is a guy that is so well known for specifically he is a scientist.
Yes.
Specifically his research in small reef sharks species. He is so influential in that area that there's a species of epaulet shark named after him.
I did not know that. That is very cool.
See, I told you it's a good sign.
Yeah.
If you look around the table here, all of those in our live studio audience and our Facebook audience, you can kind of see the table. Reef Fish is right there.
Scott Michael.
Scott
Yeah.
Michael.
I have actually another book of his here too.
The Dottyback one?
The damselfinches and anemone fishes one.
Oh, the Dottyback
That's a
one
nice
is over
copy.
here. Yeah. Basslets, Dottybacks, and hawkfishes. And the angelfish and butterflies.
I love seeing Charles's because I have that book because Ben had an extra one and it is chewed up and it's soft cover and you have this beautiful hardcover version.
Yeah, this is actually my copy. I had to bring in my own because you didn't have a copy on the
That
shelf
might have
here.
been a bird book too.
It could have been.
But
some of them were actually not just this one's chewed up. That one might have actually been chewed on.
Yeah, it's the edges of the pages are all tattered and I'm like, okay, somebody was eating it.
I had this lovebird named Floyd. Later we realized we had to change its name to Pink. Because
Nice.
Floyd laid an egg. But Floyd used to go down and take sections out of books and very strips. She would cut it into strips.
Cute.
And tuck them in her feathers and then pop over back to her cage and use that for her nest.
Cute.
Yeah, she did that with my parents' marriage license too. That was
Oh my goodness.
that wasn't so good. But
Still cute though.
yeah.
yeah, everything good I have to say about the aquarium sharks and rays though applies to any of the reef fishes series. This is just the one book in the series that I felt the need to own myself. You guys all know me in clownfish, so this is probably
Totally.
the best aquarium perspective on natural history of anemone fishes I've ever seen. So it's pretty cool.
All of his books give you that sense of, I want to learn about this particular family. Here's the family. Oh, wait, let's break that down into the complex or clade, depending on how it's organized within that family. Oh, wait, and now let's go down to the genus and then the specific species in that book. So reading some of the early reef fishes book, that was where I really started to get that sense and understanding of really what a complex of fish was all about. So if you knew how to keep a coral beauty, for example, what are the other angelfish in that same complex? Flame angels, shepherd's angels. You can kind of glean some of the information off that. Maybe you don't have the experience with that fish, but there's definitely some similarities in that book. And Scott Michael's books are that helped me do that.
For me, a lot of it is he's got a pretty firm grasp, or at least a really good way of articulating to the reader how these organisms function in the wild. And that gives you a really good context of how you can make them more interesting in a tank, shall we say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Where you can have a fish in a tank, or you can have a behaving organism in your tank. And those are two very different things.
I like the way you articulated that.
So,
Yeah, so how do we dive in farther and start talking titles? Do we want to just start with the freshwater books we love, or do we have another angle we want to get into this with?
I think that's a great plan. Start with the freshwater books we love.
Okay.
Let me just reorganize my stack here.
Yeah.
So who has one that we need to talk about first?
So let's, you brought up Axelrod there for just a minute. Mm-hmm. Let's stick with Axelrod because you can see the next most beat up book in my collection.
The big book.
To me, this was, I have 2 editions of this book because I beat up. This is Dr. Axelrod's Atlas of Freshwater Aquarium Fishes, 6th edition, revised and expanded. And sitting right here is the 8th edition, revised and expanded. Axelrod and Warren Burgess, really were the 2. So it's Axelrod was like kind of the instigator behind it, but Warren Burgess, who is another icon in the aquarium hobby, they are the ones that put this together. And to me, this I didn't think of it so much as a research book, more like a shopping catalog.
Yes. The inspiration. It is a joy to flip through that book.
It is. The photography is great. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, it's kind of fun. You do run across, I should have bookmarked it, but you run across an error. There are a couple of errors in the book, and those were kind of fun to find. But
anything that big's bound to have a couple of errors in it.
Yeah. Well, and you remember what I was saying about, me and pictures and words. This is like all pictures with few little words. In fact, even when it comes to aquarium care, there's symbols, like little pictures to tell that story even better. So this book to me was, I spent days, I would say hours and hours, but that would be understating the amount of time that I spent going through this book. It's organized loosely by family. And I say loosely because then it gets to the end and they just kind of stuck some in there.
The rest.
Yeah, the rest. Figuring out how the symbols worked and looking at just morphologically the similarities and differences in some of the fish within some of the same groups really helped me understand why a fish looks a certain way.
Yeah.
And this book did it. And then, of course, if it looked cool, I wanted it. And so
right.
it made me go try and find that book. So that was, and I don't know if there is a recent edition of this book. If there is not, the 8th edition is the last one that I remember seeing. It's worth it. You can still find copies of it around. I think I bought the 8th edition at Bargain Books back when that place was still around for like $25. If you're listening to this and you know or love an aquarium hobbyist, there's probably no better gift you could get somebody. Oh, yeah, I agree.
If you can find it. Because is it still in publication? It looks like you can get copies of it on Amazon for like $180 or $200.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But, I mean, if you're comparing that to textbook prices...
Yeah, that's true.
It's a really good value.
It's a huge book.
Yeah, it may as well be a textbook.
Yeah. They did print a mini edition of it. This book is not going to teach you how to keep aquariums. It's not going to really teach you that much about keeping a single aquarium fish. It'll give you a little hint of information, but it's full of really cool pictures and really it puts it all together. Puts them all together really well.
Yeah, and there are pictures of fish in there that it's still difficult to find pictures of online.
True.
Yeah. Which are a lot of fish. Some of the more rare ones, they don't have a lot of just photos to Google. Mm-hmm. So, cool.
Yeah, it's a fun one. I love going through it. I haven't in a long time. It's kind of fun to have it sitting here.
So maybe we should go from there and talk about the other catalog books we've got out here. There are a few of them, Freshwater.
Well, we can go, this is historically one of the best books out there. Now, how about one of the best modern catalog books out there?
Yeah, and... really, we don't have a non-modern example to compare this to, do we? This is the aquarium plant book that I'm holding.
Yes.
Yes.
There are planet aquarium books, but there aren't aquarium plant books out there.
Yeah. So
her earlier editions.
That's true, yeah. So we're talking about Crystal Castleman's Aquarium Plants. This is a translation from the German version, but so much information, and it is kind of similar to the Axelrod book in that it's a series of plants broken up by family, broken up by genus, but with the additional information of where it's found and culture and how to keep it in an aquarium and detailed information about the type localities, temperature, chemistry. The amount of information that has gone into this book is baffling every time I look at it. So much of it collected by Crystal herself in her many travels abroad, just throughout the world.
It's amazing to have a book where she talks in detail about how to keep every single one of these plants in a tank, but she goes into detail about how it grows in the wild.
Yeah, and it's really made a difference in how we keep a lot of plants. This book has practical applications to what we do here every day and what I do with my personal aquariums at home. Like, I need to have the copy I use here and the copy I use at home, because it's easier to look up information in this book than it is to look it up online by far.
True story.
It's also good to have pictures of the plants you need to get next.
Yes, and there are a ton of those in there too.
Yeah.
If only we had soft water.
Yeah, how's the soft water thing going, Charles? Anyway, that's a whole...
But yeah, like her chapter on Aponogetans is magical.
You brought that up last time too, and I still have not had a chance to really dive into that chapter. I need to.
Yeah, she goes into, there are like 4 distinct environments for Aponogetans, what those would typically be like, what sort of rest periods a plant that comes from an environment like that needs, and then that's before she even gets to describing any of the plants. It's amazing.
That's perfect. And she's really cool.
She is really cool. Yeah, we did get the opportunity to meet her, and she has a lot of amazing stories.
Yep. Super cool. We heard her talk and then hung out with her after the talk for a while, and it was great.
Yeah,
She's
a lot of
awesome.
fun.
Yep.
So-
Thanks, Crystal.
Yes, if you're into Planet Aquariums, this is a necessity.
Yep. Agreed.
Or if you are into plants even a little.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's still in print, and it's still fairly easy to get. If you need us to get you a copy, we could probably make that happen.
We can, for sure.
That's a book that's so good. I don't even bill myself as like a aquarium plant guy, but I'm referencing that book a lot.
Yeah. It's useful for fish stuff, too, because of all the biotope information in there.
By far the best source for biotopic information on plants in aquariums I have ever seen. Like nothing comes close to that.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Our biotope guy even uses it.
He's in the room, but he did not look up.
This guy.
All right. Well, we could probably go on and on forever on that book.
We could. But
What other catalogs do we have in front of us?
for freshwater?
Sure. Or ones that we feel like we need to talk about.
I mean,
Labyrinth Fish of the World by Herbert Linke or Horst Linke.
yeah, this is,
That's a new book.
yeah, that's relatively new.
I think
And
2019 or 16.
I think it's 16.
What's really exciting about it is it looks like a new book. Like,
I know.
it feels weird to see such gorgeous, like, high definition photographs in an aquarium book. Because
Right.
I'm expecting to see Dr. Axelrod's, which are fantastic photos, but
Clearly taken in the 70s
Yeah.
and 80s.
this is like, oh, I may as well be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really, I don't know. I have never spent this much on a book and been happy with that purchase.
Well, and as soon as it got here, as soon as your copy got here, I went, yep, I need that.
For our viewing or listening audience that might not know, I am a big fan, shall we say, of the Antibantoids. So a big, massive tome of a book on just that was far too enticing for me to ignore. And I was genuinely shocked with how much information is packed into this thing. Like, I spent $130 on it, and if it was half the quality it is, I would have been pleased with my purchase.
That's when you know you got a good book.
Yeah.
Yep. I've never seen, maybe this is one of the big values in a book like that is it's got all of that information in one place.
Yeah.
And there's that it's not all jarbled and all over the internet. And there are some great sites out there that do some great jobs of cataloging and identifying fish and talking about where they are and how to keep them and what's happening to them in the wild. This one just has it all in one spot. So if you want to compare the ecosystems of the licorice gouramis and some of the wild type bettas, you just turn the page.
Yeah.
You know it's there.
And there are a lot of undescribed species of bettas, and there's not a lot of good information out there. And this cleared up, like there's an entire section of this devoted to undescribed betta species. And that section alone cleared up a lot of things for me where I was like I'd see references to them and I'd be like, I have no idea what this is talking about. What is this?
And it probably has 10 pictures of each of them too.
Yeah.
The photography in that book is outstanding.
To my knowledge, it's its own photos. Like,
wow.
Like he goes out and like these at least the habitat photos, those are usually his. He's a type of person that goes out there and like collects stuff.
He's got an angelfish one too.
And a discus.
Yeah.
I know, I'm tempted.
Although, yeah, just like those are definitely amazing, but having this on the labyrinth fish, which is a pretty big and complicated group, like the depth of that information is really impressive. There's some deep information about angelfish, but the diversity of species there that he's covering is pretty amazing.
Well, he's got to go into a lot of detail if he wrote. So this book is about one family of fish. Are all the anabantoids?
I think they're classed as a suborder.
Suborder. So
Yeah.
bigger than a family.
Yeah.
And his angelfish book is on a genus.
Yeah.
They're all pterophyllum.
Yeah.
I think it's only 4 species.
I think the angelfish and discus one also covers, and this might a little bit, but is also focused on like breeding and that kind of thing
Is
too.
it angelfish and discus, or is it 2 separate
I think
books?
it's 2 separate
It's
books.
2 separate
Yeah.
books.
Wow.
So like he's got a whole section in there on breeding Altum angels.
It's the kind of book that I think you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you can use it in the breeder lab, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's okay. It's worth it. You get it. So that would mean the discus book is just on 2 species, or is there 3 species of discus now?
I think there are 4.
4?
I
Yeah,
only
I think there
know
are 4 now.
discus and aquifasciatus.
Hecali.
There's
Well,
definitely
the Hecali, like we have it listed on our wholesale list right now, like Hecali discus, and then it says Symphysodon discus.
Oh.
So I don't know if they've been redescribed or if they're incorrectly described on that list.
Look forward to an up-and-coming YouTube video about the classification of discus fish.
We're gonna have to do some research on that.
Apparently so.
I don't have my notes here, but I've taken notes on that because that's actually a video I want to do.
Okay, that sounds good.
And here's the preview for our listening and viewing audience here. Discus are very fascinating to me in the evolutionary sense because they're smack dab in the middle of a environment that very much favors speciation, and somehow there are some very specific factors where they've avoided that. And
That's a good point.
and that's there's a lot of interesting data on why that is, and because they have a
Like why there are 200 species of apistos and only 4 species maybe of discus.
Yep. It's really
I don't know how many
cool.
species of
angels.
apistos
Yeah,
there
no,
are.
I think you might be underestimating the species of apistos, but I'm not positive on that.
I don't know. Nobody knows.
Right.
No.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's genuinely true.
All right. What
All right.
else do we have here?
So, you know how much we are fans of African cichlids around here?
Crickets. Crickets.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It's
I know, we do
undeserved. The fish are amazing, but if you can't keep plants, what's the point?
Right. Right. Okay, so here's the big shout out to cichlids, and really it's Lake Malawi, Lake Tanganyika, and Lake Victoria that we're kind of focusing on there when we're talking about African cichlids. And there are no greater cesspools of speciation.
All right.
In those
This is
lakes.
language I can get on board with.
The speciation in Lake Malawi is, I think it's unmatched in the world when it comes to cichlid speciation in maybe beetles in South America.
I don't know. I'm not an invertebrologist, but
Right.
as far as vertebrates go, I can't think of anything that's comparable because Osteichthyes, which is bony fish, definitely account for the most vertebrate species on the planet out of any clade, because there's like 35,000 described species, and like 4,000 of them. Well, I think 2,000 of them are just like Lake Malawi cichlids alone.
Lake Malawi's at like about 850 species.
Okay, I think I'm thinking cichlids in general then.
Cichlids in general, yeah, 2,000 species. But 850 of them are in Lake Malawi.
Yeah.
And 500 of them are in Lake Tanganyika.
At least in terms of like square miles, I think they have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, well, getting back to the book, Odd Conings, this is Malawi cichlids in their natural habitat. And of the 800 or so species of cichlids in their natural habitat, he photographed 800 or so of them.
Wow.
In other words, all of them. Odd is the authority on cichlids, on African cichlids. If you are reading a book on African cichlids and it's not either written by him or influenced by him, they had to ask him all kinds of questions before they wrote the book. There might be like,
or the book is crap.
or the book is
Yeah.
crap. Yeah, there might be some people that wrote some books out there that are getting mad at me right now. But you know, it's true. I mean, you look at that book,
Right.
and you think, okay, so he was here. I don't know, about 10 years ago, and I was talking African cichlids with him, and I was talking about the Demasoni, and that one's named for Demasoni, and Odd said, "Oh yeah, I named that for him. He's kind of a friend of mine." Oh, that's cool. And so then we were talking about, the Stuart Grantia. Yeah, Stuart was a good guy. I had to name a fish after him too. And we're going through all these like really popular aquarium fish that are named after somebody. And he named them.
That's
like
amazing.
all of them. So this is the authority. Actually, he also has his Back to Nature series. And in the Back to Nature series of Malawi cichlids, he goes into a little more of their aquarium care. And this is really a check out this fish. Here's the fish in its natural environment, and here's a description of its environment. And he does an incredible job in that book of doing it. It's a little bit catalog-like. It's a lot catalog-like.
Oh, those are beautiful photos.
The photos
beautiful
are absolutely
fish.
incredible. Yeah. Yeah, definitely worth it.
Sorry, we're
So-
getting distracted.
I know. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, you can never say anything against the sheer amount of colors and patterns that are in that lake. And I don't even know how he captured them. Like,
He did beautiful.
it's what an undertaking. Yeah, and not to mention all the fish that are named Cunning's Eye.
Well, he had to name one or two after himself.
Yeah, isn't that the dream is to have something named after you?
Yeah, I think
Like
that would
that's
be pretty,
probably life goals.
that
Well,
would
you
be
technically can't name stuff after yourself, so that means that other people,
Yeah, you have to be
coming up with the
important
names
enough that somebody
and couldn't-
else thinks you're important.
and they were like, Conan's.
that somebody should have. So that would make sense.
Yeah, what an honor.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
deserved honor.
The only other big catalog book what am I saying? The only other, there's three of them that I'm just going to give some quick mentions to.
Mm-hmm.
The dwarf cichlids of South America, where really it's an Episto book, and then they talk about rams a little bit in there too.
And
Do we
then
know-
Rams showed up.
Do we know who that's by?
Hold, please.
Yeah, we might need to get out a couple of them because there's the Corydorus one as well. We've got the West African cichlid book from Verlag, which is also really, really good. Yeah. A good, niche book if you're interested in that kind of thing.
That's the African cichlid book that I like.
What's the one that you like?
Okay, yes, but the West
met him,
African
too.
cichlid book by Anton Lamboche. Let's say that for now.
All right, we can say
and
that.
then we'll plead dumb American.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a fantastic book, and he's a very interesting guy too.
The South American dwarf cichlids book, which really it's Apistogrammas, Crenicaras, and Mycogeophagus, is Hans Mailand and Dieter Bork. This is the book on Apistos. This is another one that, the Apistos study group is out there and they've got some great online information. But here it's all in one place.
Yeah,
The
context.
The Koryakek book is Ian Fuller and Hans George Evers. I got both of them to sign mine.
Oh, he put a smiley face.
I know, right?
Also, Evers is got a Koryakek named after him, by the way.
I would hope so.
So does Fuller.
Good.
Yep, there's a Fuller eye. This is Ingo Seidel's Back to Nature Guide, the L catfishes. And this is one that probably needed to be updated before it was finished. Because it's L number catfish although I guess the Cory Catfishes book is the same way. Those are that's this brief overview of all of these amazing books out there that are, if you want to get into a topic, like a group of fishes, you got to have the book. You can do all the online research you want to do, but if you don't have the book,
then you don't have the context. Like,
don't have
you've
the
got to
context.
try and piece it together
Yeah.
yourself, which is
You know what?
impossible.
Forced me to buy this book because I've been stuck in my own beta world for a long time. And I had a customer come in and ask me about chocolate gummies, and I realized, and I thought, wow, if I'm going to be the antibantoid guy, I really got to expand my horizon there.
you got to know them all.
Yeah, and so I picked up the book and I've been working my way through them and learning a lot. And there's a lot to learn in here.
How's your knowledge of climbing perches?
Decent.
That's the
Better than most?
that's the common name for most of the tenopomas.
Yeah.
Climbing perch.
I like the dwarf tenopomas.
I know, me
They
too.
don't get nearly enough love.
Those would be the
And Sorgii and
Yeah.
Acudirastra.
Fasciolatum. Microtenopoma is a genus, but I don't know if they're all sorted into there or not.
I'm not sure.
I know at least those two are the two common ones, but none of them are common.
No, that's true. Right above, so Charles right now is over by the bookshelf, and there's a whole set of books above his head that doesn't really get a whole lot of attention around here, and that's the Bench Atlases.
Oh, yeah.
And those were so when I got Axelrod's book, that was like the catalog. And when I was getting into it, there wasn't this crazy thing you kids do these days called the internet. Yeah, I'm that old. I got to say that crap every once in a while. But the Bench Atlas, you could pull that out, and that actually went into detailed information, species by species. I think there's 3 or 4 volumes of the Bench Atlases, and then a couple of editions of those volumes. It got to the point where it was, it got ridiculous because you had the first volume of that book, and it went into detail, and then all of a sudden there was a fish. Wait, he didn't mention this fish. Oh, because that's in volume 2. And then you start to get into that genus of that type of fish and go, but wait, where's this fish? That one's in volume 3.
And of course, there's no easy index to search. You've got to kind of look through them all and find it and stuff like that.
No, actually, I think
or
there
is there
an
a
index volume
global
as well.
index?
I believe. Okay, now I got to get up and get him.
That's pretty cool.
Oh,
Did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, the Bench. No, I didn't actually, but I think there is a Bench Atlas that's like the reference atlas, so you can figure out which atlases you need to buy.
So you can peruse the tomes.
Yeah, I'm also, I'm going back like 10 plus years, 30. When I'm going back to trying to remember how I used those books, but
Just say 1+ years, and then you don't need, some number of years.
some number of years. Yeah. Yeah. But the Bench Atlases were the reference to, okay, I want some more detailed information in there on this fish.
Cool. All right, what else do we got? I'm looking through. I'm looking at the piles. We've got so many books on the table right now. There's probably at least 20.
Something like that.
so I had mentioned kind of offhand the Wild Betta article that started it all. So here's a history lesson for the people out there. Aquarium Fish International had a column called Adventures in Fish Breeding, and it was written by Mike Helweg. And a lot of my inspiration for trying stuff was based on this column, and I really wish at some point someone could like maybe compile that or edit it into an actual book, but we don't have that. What we do have is Mike Hellweg made this very overarching, comprehensive
comprehensive
book on culturing live foods for Aquaria. Mike Hellweg is known for two things: massive, large water changes frequently, and a lot of my fish room like maintenance style is very much a derivative of his influence on me reading his stuff all the time, and his love of live foods and his adamant that it's the best way, and
His insistence on live foods.
and it's hard to argue with a man who managed to breed 176 species in 1 year.
Though, one thing to note about Mike Hellweg and live foods is he'll be the first to tell you the main reason he uses live foods, right? Do you know what that is?
Yeah. It's because, oh man, I'm trying to think of how he said it, because he said it to me in the store. Go ahead. I'll let you do
It's
it.
because he's cheap.
Yeah, there it is. He had a cheeky way of saying it.
He
though.
did, yeah. I don't remember what it was, but
Leave it to an aquarist to find the most difficult way to do something just because it's less expensive.
right. That's
Well, not just cause in this
That's
case,
exact.
but most aquarists I know, just cause is a plenty good explanation.
He's got an entire section into this book that I would almost call a like an almost defensive, like, well, scientifically, this is why this is the best way. Like, look at the nutritional profile, and I love it.
You know what's interesting? If you kind of open that book a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Hold the microphone up to it. Hear the cracking sound? Right? Hear the cracking sound in this book? No. You know why that is? So the cracking sound would be pages that haven't been opened much or ever. Because I hate live food.
It's such a good book, though.
I had this conversation with Mike, and it was very much a tongue-in-cheek comedic conversation, and he would say, but they're so much better, and I would go, and it's really not that hard to do, and I would go, and he would come up with all of these reasons why you should try and do live foods for your fish, and he's absolutely right, but I'm still not going to do it.
So this is a book that I don't own, even though I absolutely love it. And there's a very specific...
Was that a hint, wink, wink, your birthday's coming up or something?
No, it's not. There's a very specific reason why I don't own this book. And that's because, and this is my pitch for this book and why it's amazing, is that every piece of information in here I could find in laboratory manuals on how to culture these things. And given my background, that's just easier for me. This is by far the best layperson way to get this information, because like sifting through a 180-page lab manual how to maintain Moina, or
Not
you know what I
gonna do
mean?
it.
Not like that's not fun.
No.
Honestly, not worth the average person's time
No.
when somebody's already gone to the effort to distill it down for you.
Yes, he has taken the time to take all the fat out of something like that isn't relevant to a hobbyist. Because,
Practical knowledge.
yeah, because in a lab environment, all that information is useful. In a fish room, no.
No.
And so he's taken all that you need, and it's in this book. So I'm just going to do a quick, I'm going to read off types of things that are pitched in here as live foods, so that maybe people, phytoplankton, protozoans, brine shrimp, plants and algae, worms, mollusks, crustaceans, insects, fish, and amphibians.
He kind of starts small and works his way up to big.
Yeah, he does.
Yes. You don't hear plants and algae like touted as live foods that often, but I love its inclusion in there.
Yeah.
You know, that is one live food that I use on a regular basis and always did. duckweed for goldfish.
I use
sure
it
they
for my
love it.
fish at home. I gear towards algae eaters because it's easy to grow and I don't have to remember to feed every day because I'm that lazy that I have to use live foods.
That counts as live foods too.
Yes.
Yep.
That's a
Yep.
great one. Whose hands here can we put that book in and crack some of those pages?
Yeah. Somebody needs to do more with live foods. Live food breeder room guy, breeder lab guy. All right. So we have to pause for a moment because I need more beer.
Wow.
All right, where do we leave off here?
I was about to start talking about another one of the most influential books on me.
Is it over here?
It is. It is now in your hands. You got to hand me the seconded the one underneath that.
Oh wait, I'll take this one.
Okay. Yeah, and you can take that one. There.
This is really cool.
I have not even cracked that one yet. I got to get into
You
it.
should, because look at it.
It's gorgeous.
It's so beautiful. Anyway, I'll talk about that.
Okay, so Takashi Amano is the next author we're going to discuss in detail, and this will be the next hour or so.
Genuinely, because just the books by and about him are so beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
amazing.
So a lot of the books that we talked about, in fact, I think all of the books we talked about are by scientists and sciencey people. Takashi Amano, although was very scientific, he was first an artist. So Nature Aquarium World was the first book by Takashi Amano. And that's the first time I remember picking this book up in I think it was in Barnes and Noble back in their old location. And it was the first time I had this concept of, wait, aquariums as art? And he really is the one who invented that concept. Isn't it? That's a stretch. Perfected. Brought perfection to that concept, maybe.
Maybe.
I would say he brought the concept of bringing perfectionism into an aquarium.
Right. He was
Would
a photographer first who kept fish and started. He definitely started the whole trying to recreate a natural scene in an aquarium. I mean, that was him, not just a glass box to keep things alive in, but
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to pass that book to the studio audience just for
Yeah,
reference
for sure.
because I just saw the best photo of a school Espay pencilfish I have ever seen.
So Takashi lived in Japan and worked in Japan, and he started a company called Aqua Design Amano, which was that company actually is still around, and they still make some of the finest aquarium products in existence.
Mm-hmm.
He had such incredibly high standards. It wasn't about what can we get away with. It's only about doing it as good as something could possibly be done.
Yeah. Health in an aquarium is just the starting point.
Right.
When for
Right.
so many other perspectives, that's the end goal is
Yeah.
a healthy aquarium. And that's like, nope, we start there, then we get better.
Then we get much, much better. Yeah. And he did it brilliantly, and he was brilliant. He was a photographer. The original G8 summit, the big, all the world leaders getting together to try and make the world better. The backdrop of the original G8 summit was a giant Takashi Amano photograph of an incredible tree. It's in one of these books, and we'll have to show that later. But that's kind of the level that Takashi was at. He had this aquarium in his home. I believe it still exists. It was a 12 foot by 8 foot by 6 foot deep planet aquarium, something along some. I
Yeah.
don't have those numbers quite right, but it was
A pond in a box.
it was huge, and it's perfect.
It's hard to, I think the fact that you can't remember how big it is so indicative of how well his style translates to in an aquarium.
Right.
You can't tell because it's so well executed in that space that the scale is what he sets, not what you interpret,
It's almost like the work of art isn't the aquarium. It's the experience you have in the room.
Yeah.
So he paid attention when he was doing the layout inside the aquarium. He paid attention to the trees you could see out the window near the aquarium when he was doing the layout in the aquarium. And it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
I've also had the privilege of, I once took the time to find footage of him working on an aquascape for like a 3,000 gallon aquarium. And he's like obsessing over, and I don't mean obsessing in a disparaging way, like obsessing over each twig and which direction it's pointing. And like that definitely translates into the final product.
So I watched him do an aquascaping demonstration live at the Aquatic Artists Association convention in 2008. And he started out accumulating the stuff that was going to go in the tank. And it was just a 60p, so it was a 2-foot tank. Maybe it was a 3-foot tank. Might have been a 3-foot tank. It was not a big tank. It was a very moderately sized Planet Aquarium. And I'm looking at the stuff he's putting out, and I'm, with the guy next to me, and we're talking about the same stuff we put in a tank. I don't know what the big deal out of this guy is, right? And I'd seen his books. I knew he was great. But when I saw with the stuff, I thought, that's what we put in tanks too. Why is this such a big deal? And then I watched him work. And if you ever sit and stare at some of the great painters' work, like a Monet or a Van Gogh, and you can see each individual brushstroke, and you can see what each individual brushstroke does for that painting. Every single plant, twig, moss, branch, leaf in the tank we watched Amano Aquascape was done with intent and purpose. And in the end, yep, same stuff I put in a tank. Nope, not capable of doing that.
Same equipment, completely different execution.
Yeah.
So I think in an easy way to connect that to this biography, I'm talking about Takashi Amano's biography, Origin of Creation. This isn't an autobiography. I don't know who wrote it, but it's produced by ADA. There's a picture of where Amano got his inspiration for the aquarium world, where he started, where he got into it. And I'm flipping through to find this, but it's a cement creek in Japan where he played as a child. And it's just sort of like coming from that and creating this vision that is still used in this hobby throughout the world. This book is worth having just to sort of see the progression of his life in that way, from, this kid playing in a cement creek to this beautiful aquascaper.
And I will throw out there, I want to spend more time with that book. I have had a few minutes flipping through it. I think that is by far, like, the book and the way it's laid out, that is the prettiest book I've ever seen in my life.
It really is.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, this would be a perfect coffee table book. Like, anyone would enjoy flipping through this. The artwork, the pictures of his tanks, pictures of his inspiration, and throughout his life is really cool.
Even his autograph is cool. Like my Nature Aquarium, unfortunately, Nature Aquarium World Book 1, I do not have autographed, but Book 3 is autographed. And just look at that.
Beautiful.
Here, I'll hold it up so you guys can maybe see that out there in the world. But his autograph was just, I have no idea what it says. I mean, it's in Japanese. But 2008, 11, 15 was when that was signed.
Yeah.
So,
and I think I have the newer edition of that book at home too.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
It's a little bit different.
I don't have Book 2. I had it for a while. I don't know what happened to it. I'm sure I lent it out to somebody because I have a tendency to do that.
So get into, because I think like the biography, which is called Origin of Creation, I don't know if I mentioned that. I think it's worth mentioning, but those books I think are more worth talking about. Does he go into how to do it, or is this?
They're very much how to do it. So Nature Aquarium World, it's divided into sizes of aquariums. and he does some history stuff and some where he came from stuff in the beginning. But then there's these gorgeous glossy pictures of aquariums and the ingredients. And so there's this one is called Flowing Between Mountains, and it's the plants are in a rock and sand layout that imitates the gentle slope of the foot of a mountain. I went through a time when I particularly enjoyed creating works using the composition of a narrow road leading off into the mountains.
Which is pretty much a cliche at this point.
It is, but he did it. And then there's here's the size of the tank, here's temperature it's kept, and all of the stuff that goes in it, what lights he used, what plants he used, and just all the details of that.
Takashi's books were actually sources and references I used in our substrates videos and our root tabs videos, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a lot going on in there.
The back of it, he talks about layout and the basic concepts of aquatic plant layout. And, you've heard me talk about ratios in aquariums. If any of you have ever seen me give my talk on doing the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio in an aquarium. Yep, there's where I got that from. I'm opening up a picture of Nature Aquarium World, and there is the golden ratio laid out, how to lay out the golden ratio in an aquarium in detail. I did not make that concept up. I never made a claim that I did either, by the way. But that's it right there. That's his design.
Yeah.
So.
And the simplicity of the concepts are really apparent when you flip through that book. Now, that doesn't mean following those concepts you can achieve the same execution, but the concepts, yeah, the care, the types of plants, the layout, like the themes, are easy to understand, but take a lifetime to master. And this is the place to start, I think.
I agree. He made it so that when you read through those books, you can start to get some of the concepts that even if you don't feel like you have that artistic eye, you still say, okay, if I have a focal point, this is where I should put it. I don't just have this cool plant I like, I should stick it in the aquarium, but stick it in the aquarium in a very specific spot.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
There, I think we rambled on a little bit about Takashi Amano, but I can't say enough about him.
You can't talk about the books without talking about the man.
Right. Yep, for sure.
Cool.
Great books, very influential.
So in his spirit of planted aquarium, like layout guides and like how-tos, I think we've got a few that like sort of follow that, I don't know, hierarchy. What word am I looking for? Genealogy.
Yeah, we should talk about Karen Randall's book.
Yeah, I think so.
Kind of in the same light. If you're looking at, Crystal Castleman's book is How to Grow Every Single Aquarium Plant, and Takashi Amano's of How to Take It to This Amazing Level, where do you start written in basic how-to instructions that are easy to understand with great pictures? Mm-hmm. Karen Randall's book, Sunken Gardens, is just, the whole language of the book is easy to understand.
Yeah, I think so. This functions as like a true how-to book. Right. How to keep plants alive and what happens if something goes wrong. And here are some fish that work really well in environments like this. This Sunken Gardens book is probably maybe one of the first books you should buy if you're getting into planted aquariums. I
don't disagree with that. I think if you had the combination of, the latest or one of the last Takashi Amano books, Crystal Castleman's book, and Karen Randall's book.
I'm not even sure if you'd need to research on the internet at that point. You would just have it,
You're set. Yeah.
I think the phrase you're looking for is you'd be kicking ass.
You would. Sure.
Is your mom going to get Charles in trouble for making us swear?
Sure. Come down and give me a stern warning.
Yeah, that definitely needed to be talked about. She did a really good job with this.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to seeing what she comes up with next.
Mm-hmm. And Karen's a great lady too. She's we talk about the convention a lot, but it was a great convention. We hung out with Crystal and we hung out with Karen, and it was great.
This hobby is definitely a collection of personalities, and if people are in it for long enough, you people recognize their names.
Right.
But going to those conventions is pretty equalizing. You get the opportunity to talk to everybody. You get the opportunity to learn from everybody. So the reason we keep bringing that up is because those places are so valuable to go to. If you ever get the opportunity, go to an aquarium convention.
I think I had lunch with Crystal and Karen like 3 times and breakfast twice.
Yeah. Great people.
Yep. Just hung out. It was cool.
Okay.
What are we missing in the freshwater aquarium world?
I
mean, Fish Diseases by Edward Noga.
Yeah, that one doesn't sound as fun, but it's a big book of fish diseases.
It's a big. It makes a cracking noise when you open it. Just so you know.
I don't know if we have a beat up copy of it. I think we have a beat up copy of this in the basement.
That would make sense.
That's right.
I have like 3 books on fish diseases, and I'm pretty sure one of them is this one.
Yeah, of everything we've talked about, probably the subject that has the most misinformation that could use the most clarification.
Yes.
Right.
Your fish has dropsy. Okay.
Yes, what does that? Oh, I think it has swim bladder. Well, yes, it does.
I was hoping that was going to get worked into one of our podcasts because that was just...
Oh, man. I've heard
Right.
that a lot of times in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I think my fish may have swim bladder.
Well, unless it's... There are certain fish that don't have swim bladders.
Yes.
Like sharks
Sure.
and rays.
Sure.
Some have modified swim bladders.
I think my shark
Like
might not have a
goldens.
swim bladder, guys. All right.
Well, that's good. Then it's a real shark.
All right. Well, we need a fish disease podcast, and then we can really do the rant. But let's talk about the book for today.
Okay. Sorry.
I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about it just because it's one of those things that like only comes up when it comes up.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that you only... It's not like, a page turner.
Yeah, this is not the type of book. It's not like this where like on a Saturday night you'll be like, oh yeah, I'll sit down with a nice warm beverage of like...
This is a book for frantic flipping.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
What's wrong with my fish? There's the book.
There's the book on what is wrong with your fish. Yeah. How recent is this book? I don't know it very well at all. I just know that we have it.
It's that's one of the things about fish diseases, that it doesn't have to be that recent of a book. As long as it was written in the last 15 or 20 years, the diseases haven't changed much.
Yeah, that was sort of my question. Like, the diseases haven't changed, but
Yeah.
like our methods for being able to treat them have. As in, like,
Yeah.
they're like, if I look in this Axelrod book, if a fish has a fungal infection, he recommends taking it out and like dabbing it with iodine because it would disinfect. But now we have like, let's just chuck some Seachem Canaplex in there and it'll take care of it. So I was just curious to see how well that book is able to cover those things, even though it can definitely tell you what's wrong with your fish.
Yeah. I am now realizing there's probably a section here that warrants me taking a copy of this book home. And
Saturday night and a warm
All
drink.
right.
Here you go.
This is when we need to flip through some more.
Yeah.
in part, okay, so I'm going to go through some of the different contents in this book. It'll talk about like different types of... So this is not just a book for aquarium fish, by the way. Let's give you that context here. This is fish diseases, not just...
Aquarium fish diseases, yeah.
So the first section is talking about aquarium fish, bait fish, food fish, and laboratory fish, and why they're different. And then it has sections on like different types of culture systems, like flow through, et cetera, et cetera. This is very clearly, and this is probably part of why I like it, but this is very clearly like a written from the perspective of someone who worked in a lab, because it's got sections on like postmortem techniques, like preserving samples, biosecurity, animal welfare, food safety, and then the sections that will, and it's literally listed, part 2, problem lists. And I don't know like why that gets me, but it does. And then it's got a section on things like temperature stress, ammonia poisoning, gas supersaturation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
All very important subjects, by the way.
Yeah, and I love that happens before you get into any of the diseases, because I can't tell you how often someone comes in and they're like, I think my fish is sick. And it's like, no, there's just something wrong with your water.
Quit overfeeding and do a water change.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are all these crazy like cysts and marks that keep appearing on my fish? I think it has a disease. No, you scrubbed out your filter media and ruined everything. Start over. It's ammonia burns. So that is a great place to start.
But then it goes into all these different types of diseases and stuff. And this is a section I've apparently never noticed before, but there's an entire section on pharmacology in fish. And so it's talking about like different types of antibiotics, carbon dioxide, chloride, copper, and the one that caught my eye is ozone and peat as pharmaceuticals for fish. And I'm like, oh.
We've talked about that before, but I don't know if we've gotten like real information about it. And this is one that we all, I think, need to flip through a little more. I don't know this book that well. You're convincing me, Charles.
Diseases have always been a section in books that I like flipped through.
Yeah. Like it needs to be on the fish room shelf.
Yeah.
But it might not be your real page turner. But if you're the type of person who's got 20 or 30 tanks and you're bringing in fish 2 or 3 times a month, you should probably have this as a backup because you're going to get something weird eventually.
And then have somebody like a Charles or you to like deal with it because I don't want to deal with the disease.
It's scary.
I got you guys for
I
that.
mean, we've got all the books. That's what we're here for generally, you know.
This is why we quarantine stuff for you guys, because we have the resources to do this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
God.
skip our quarantine process when you have this 500-page book on your shelf.
And a lab.
All right, guys, this is getting too real.
Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, there's
so much in there.
There's so much out there, and dealing with fish disease is probably the scariest thing as a hobbyist.
It's unfun.
Because it's not fun. You can lose everything overnight. And it's one of those things where it's like you mentioned, you talked about it, you articulated it so well. You skip the disease section. It's not a fun thing to know.
Right.
And so like...
The pictures look yucky.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think it's bad that the industry as a whole shunts the responsibility of fish disease onto the consumer more often than not.
That's why we take responsibility for it. That's why I shed the responsibility onto you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's the disease book. We covered it. That is the disease book too. I mean that it covers it. It goes into detail. It is one of those places where some practical fun knowledge is there, but when it comes to diagnosing and treating diseases, you do need to get a bit more scientific, a bit more technical about it. That's
you
the
do.
book.
Yeah, we missed a pretty big name in aquarium books, guys. When we talked about Planet Aquariums, I'm not seeing too many on here we didn't talk about, but we did not even pause on Wallstad's book.
Good catch.
And I've gotten into a debate on this recently because the planted aquarium hobby has turned away from this book hard from what I can see.
They have.
Some of it a little deserved, most of it not, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Wallstad starts out this book saying, so there's this idea going around that you can have a balanced aquarium if you have fish and plants that will sort of feed itself and make this whole cycle work without too much human input, if any. And she goes into this book to try and either prove or disprove that theory, and she came pretty close to making it happen, you know?
Yeah.
We're definitely not using Wallstad's methods in modern planted aquariums much. But her concepts are pretty much everywhere.
She kind of made people start thinking about using soil in aquariums instead of a bunch of rocks.
Yeah. The argument that came back to me was, well, there were people keeping things similarly to how we do now back then, but she was just figuring out the way she could do it and testing rigorously and just sharing what she came up with. And that testing is so valuable.
This book is way more a journey than a manual.
Yeah.
And if it's taken that way, there is a lot you can glean from this book.
Oh, yeah. Just hey, I dumped this much copper in there. This much was used up. This is what plants typically do is really good stuff to know.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even get into like the actual nutrient uptake and stuff like that she's listed in there. But this is not necessarily a guide to planted aquariums, but it is a journal of somebody who's done a ton of testing on it. And it's definitely worth having.
Yep, I agree. I set up a tank using a bunch of her methods, and it was notable that the plants that she talks about in this book, if you grow those plants that she talks about that did well for her in soil, capped soil, they're going to grow like crazy.
Yeah, whether or not you have filtration, whether or not you do water changes.
No CO2, all of that stuff. Watch them grow.
Definitely.
Other plants just wilted away and did nothing.
Yeah, I want to get back to something real quick. Yes, Amy said copper for plants. Come at us. Anyways.
Yeah. True story.
Like, look into it.
Yeah. But like those little like trace elements and stuff like that, I don't know if you'd consider copper a trace element, but like those types of things that we sort of discount, like we want to think about the big stuff. Like it's important to know how much plants use. Whether or not you need to know that to use fertilizers doesn't mean that it's not still in there.
Copper is one of the main components for one of the intermediary compounds that helps plants photosynthesize. So without it, your plants don't exist.
I think it does qualify as a trace element.
Yes.
Maybe even a minor trace element. Notice how we're using two words to make it even smaller.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they don't need it.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a few people look at like flourish, be like, "There's copper in it. Is it going to kill my shrimp?" Okay, no, and it's not in a concentration that will, unless you're like massively overdosing, like hundreds of times what you should be.
Right.
But your plants do need that. That's not there for no reason.
Right.
She introduced me to the concept of allelopathy.
Yeah.
She goes into detail, and but I should have prepped for this and talked about there are two plants where there's a very specific scientific study on the concept of allelopathy, and I think it's kabamba and duckweed, or hornwort and duckweed.
I don't know about Wallstad's book, but I do know there's a relationship between anacris and duckweed.
Anacris and duckweed, I think that is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anacris produces a chemical that kills duckweed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full
That's
stop.
allelopathy. So so the interesting takeaway from that is allelopathic properties in organisms are extremely challenging to quantify. What killed my plant when there's this compound in the water that is really hard to measure, that was being produced by some other plant to kill another plant? I mean, that's the reason that compound is produced. If duckweed is growing too much in the ecosystem where anacris is found, the duckweed shades out the anacris. The anacris doesn't get enough light. The duckweed thrives. The anacris dies. So produce something to kill the duckweed. And it makes you wonder, if those two simple organisms have this relationship, how many other organisms out there have relationships like that we just don't know about?
Right?
Plants are living things, and they do behave like living organisms. They compete, and they're vicious organisms.
Sorry, there are people giggling over your shoulder. That's what's the distraction.
Yeah, that's fine. But like a lot of people are like, they don't do anything, and I'm like, oh, they do. They
do.
They just work on a different, I won't say time scale. They work on a different like plane of existence than we do.
Basically.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is the book to give you answers, but dang, does it give you plenty of questions.
It does.
I remember when I first read it, and I highlighted a whole section about like how calcium interacts with copper and how it can like or calcium carbonate can kind of like absorb it and stuff like that. And a few months later, that came out as the reason why our saltwater quarantine wasn't working. I'm like, Oh yeah.
Oh.
I got a tidbit of that in that book, like just that reaction can happen, and this makes total sense now, you know? So.
Yeah, it has its place in the hobby. All of you naysayers out there that are slamming Diana Wallstead and her amazing book, just read the book and then come back and let's talk about it, because it's so much fun to talk about.
And if all you know is the method as it's traded around as like on the internet, then sure, come after that all you want. Say you need a filter on an aquarium. Big news, right?
Right.
Yeah, obviously it's easier if you have it. But if you do it in those specific ways that she listed out, you can do it with those plants.
Yeah, my problem with a lot of the Wallstead naysayers is they're very clearly people who are reading things that people who have read things by Wallstead. Like this is very clearly not just once removed, but 2 or 3 times.
They're jumping on a bandwagon.
Yeah, and I'm like, what?
Yep. She's a really cool lady, too. I got to hang out with her in November
that's a nice
2008.
signature.
I know.
That's beautiful.
And she's very proper. And so, of course, it would be,
So neat.
her penmanship is fantastic. It's very readable. And yep. And
Beautiful.
She's delightful.
All right. Is that all of the Freshwater books we have out right now?
It is. And I just looked over at my shelf, and there's a whole bunch of other ones we should talk about, but we just go on and on and on.
I even have a book that was recommended to me in that argument that I had about Wallstad's book that I currently have not unpacked at home in a box because I ordered it after having that conversation. And
Which
I'm like,
book?
The Optimum Aquarium by Caspar Horst.
Caspar Horst, the German method, probably has a lot of. There was a
German book would be called The Optimum Aquarium.
Right, it would.
The Optimum Aquarium.
George Farmer just came out with a book that I really want to take a look at too. There are so many that
I saw that. Yeah. It's almost like books are making a resurgence.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because a good book gives you the context that the internet never can.
Right.
Like it will give you the overview. You can find a lot of details. Like you could definitely search what one beta's environment and chemistry looks like. Mm-hmm. But that's not going to tell you the relationship between all the betas and the greater relationship between that and all the labyrinth fish unless you keep going page to page to page and come up with that on your own, or somebody did it for you.
And wrote it down.
And took 1,000 pictures. I think 1,800 pictures are what's in that book. There was there was some number on it, and I think it was 1,800.
Quick information at our fingertips is priceless.
True.
And we are able to make leaps and bounds in this hobby that we never would have been able to make in the 90s because of the internet. We don't want to discount that.
We have not evolved beyond needing books. We have evolved to have an additional resource at our disposal.
An amazing additional resource.
Yeah.
All of it. All the information. But gleaning through it, books do that. Books do that better.
I agree.
Yeah.
What are your favorite books, listening audience? I need more recommendations. I need to add to that box that I have unpacked at home that I still need to read and I'm really excited about.
I want to do a little shout out to all of those people listening that started to get into this before the internet was really a thing, like me. And the 2 or 3 of these books are books that are what made me into the aquarist that I am today, that got me my start. What am I missing? What were some of the books that you guys, maybe people that are older than 40?
Sorry. Just the weird way you preface that. I don't know.
Well, it's different because nowadays, if somebody gets into the aquarium hobby today, the first thing they're going to do is hop on the internet, and that's not a bad way to start. And I don't mean that there's something wrong with it, but that wasn't available to me when I got into the hobby. It was books. So those are the people I want to reach out to. When you started in the hobby before the internet, what were some of your favorite books? I want to know what they are because I need them. Mm-hmm. There was a book written in 1970, I think it was 71, and I haven't been able to find it. But okay, so 1974 is when sea turtles were protected. They went on the endangered species list. Prior to that, you could go buy a sea turtle at a pet store. I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's a really bad thing, right? But
gives me a little like, oh,
yeah.
No.
Yeah. This book has a section on keeping sea turtles in your home aquarium. I need to find that book because of the historical perspective that it gives us.
Yeah.
It's important perspective.
Yeah.
That's another great thing that all of these books do is keep that historical perspective in place. The book that Amy brought out that was first published in 1953, and it still has relevant information in it.
Yeah, I said the 70s, and I was off by 20 years.
Right.
Yeah. And pictures of fish that we still keep. Like, look.
Yeah. And that one on the top right is a colorized photo. Like the original of that is black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what are some of the best new... We get lost here going through the pages of these books.
We really do.
They're not dusty, by the way. Well, okay, some of them are a little dusty, but most of them aren't dusty because we use them here. It's a great resource.
So let's hear it. You can leave a comment below this episode on our website, but you can also email us at podcast@watercolorsaquariumgallery.com. We usually post these episodes on Facebook, so you can leave a comment under there too, or whatever you see things on, but we'd love to hear your feedback. Make sure to leave us a rating and review on iTunes. That's how we seed feedback for the show overall, but you can email that as well. So just keep in touch however you can.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. That was perfect.
There's also, the YouTube channel if you want little distilled tidbits of stuff we've talked about from some of these books.
Sure. We've done one review on one of these books, but seems like there's a lot more to come that we need to go through.
I mean, a lot of the informational videos we have are very clearly derived from information from these books.
Yep,
sure.
For sure. Well, thank you very much for listening, guys. We really do appreciate it. And let's have lots of fun. Keep those hands wet. Unless you're going to touch a book.